The following podcast is part of the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network.
Hey, Fidelity. How can I remember to invest every month?
With the Fidelity app, you can choose a schedule and set up recurring investments in stocks and ETFs.
Oh, that sounds easier than I thought.
You got this.
Yeah, I do. Now, where did I put my keys?
You will find them where you left them.
Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC, member NYSE, SIPC.
This episode is brought to you by the Toyota Grand Highlander. Life's journey brings constant change, filled with exciting surprises and grand challenges. And with its spaciousness, power, and style, the Toyota Grand Highlander is more than a vehicle. It's your partner in embracing all life throws at you. From the spacious adult-sized third row to seating for up to 8 passengers, the Toyota Grand Highlander is up for every grand challenge. Learn more at toyota.com/Grand Highlander. Toyota, let's go places.
Wholeness means to me being in a state of joy.
Wholeness means feeling complete, owning my authentic gifts.
Wholeness is really connected. Everything is connected to everything.
Wholeness is where we have access to all parts of ourselves.
It has been over 4 years since I've been able to spend time with Jeff. In January 2021, we spent all day recording a class for him, and you can purchase that class, and I'll put a link in the description below. If there was anything that you like in this podcast, then you will love times 1,000 that class. He actually teaches those concepts that he just hints on in this podcast, so I really direct you there if this speaks to you. Jeff is one of those people that changed the course of my life. His openness and non-judgmental self and pure love is just a balm that came at a time when I needed it so much. Whenever I talk about this shamanic journey I went on, it was like a 7-month of classes once a month, and then we would talk almost every day within a Facebook group. It changed who I was, changed who I am. It was Jeff. Jeff was the one that taught that class. He's going to do another class coming up shortly, so reach out if that interests you as well. So I really look forward to you listening to this episode with Jeff and to hear him, and his story is just amazing. But what he's learned from it, what he shares, what he is able to witness inside of you because of what he's been through is even greater than the miracles that you'll hear in this episode. Please like and subscribe and leave us a comment so that we can get Jeff's message spread out to a bigger and broader audience.
My journey, we're all on a journey. We're all on a journey. My personal journey is one of many things. I think I've lived 9 lifetimes, like a cat or something. But some of the interesting high points on my journey were, number one, falling in love completely, hopelessly, endlessly in love, and building a family, and then having that all shift, vanish, change. Also, I think I've been thinking about this too, like the journey of, wow, like I was athletic. I was a Division I, football player, and went from that to like in the hospital, couldn't even do my own breathing, intubated, and from that to a wheelchair, to a prosthetic limb, to a walker. And now I limp about, but I'm upright. Mm-hmm. So that physical journey of all the different aspects of health and strength, and not health and strength. Mm-hmm. And yet, as part of this whole thing, the near-death experience, having left the body, and we can talk about that. Mm-hmm. I can tell a story if you want to go there.
Yeah, I do.
And I'm happy to. Yeah, so, I grew up as a young farm boy on the family farm. It was a household of all boys. We were rough and tumble, and I think the first time that something really soft came into my life was when I met Tamara, my first wife, when I was a young man and fell madly head over heels in love.
Mm-hmm.
And it was love at first sight, but it was beyond that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was a knowing. It was like, wow, there was a connection, there was a spiritual connection. You could even call it a soul contract, I suppose. And we fell madly in love. You know, we had a small family, two sons, and we'd been married for 10 years when we had a horrific automobile accident. And we were actually on a family vacation. It was a road trip. We had gone away for Easter and went down from northern Utah to southern Utah just to enjoy her family, the Red Rocks, the warmer weather. And we had a beautiful weekend. You know, we celebrated Easter. We had all the family traditions. You know, my youngest son, Griffin, was just a toddler. And Mechelle, we've got grandchildren that are just about that age now.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, and they're just learning to walk. They're walking, they're talking, they're saying a few words, and they're beginning to develop their personalities. And that was the stage he was in. And I'll never forget, you know, that Easter. Like we had family tradition. We would get eggs and hard boil the eggs and then dye the eggs brilliant colors and put them out in the garden and let the kids go find the eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's engraven in my heart. I just remember him toddling about, you know, walking a little bit, crawling a little bit. He's, you know, he's slobbering, he's finding the eggs.
Mm.
But he would bring them to me and he would say, Dad, ball. He thought he had a ball, you know, Dad, ball. And
Oh,
you know, it's fun for me to see my grandson in that same state these days.
yeah.
Over at their house the other day, and Ashley, his mother, my daughter-in-law, had been away with them, and I was talking to my son, and they pulled up, and she got him out of the car, and even from across the yard, he started waving at me. You know, he was waving at me, and he wanted to get down, and then you know, he came running over, and it's just fun to be recognized and have that connection. But that's what was happening on this Easter weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then Monday came, you know, and it was time to go back to work. And I loaded the whole family up and buckled the kids in their car seats and got everything ready to go. We said our goodbyes and we were ready to head home. And I often share this, but as we were pulling away from the house, we had been visiting my wife's parents, and they were out on the porch, you know, waving the way Grandma and Grandpa do. And as I began to pull away from the curb, Tamara said, "Wait, stop." I thought she'd forgotten something, you know, so I stopped the car. And she looked at me and she said, "I just want to say goodbye to Mom and Dad one more time."
Mm.
And you know, in that moment, I'll admit, I thought, gosh, we said goodbye. Let's get on the road, you know. Why again?
Right.
But I noticed, I watched, I saw as she ran up, and she not only hugged them both, but she kissed them both.
Mm.
And I noticed that, you know, I mean, I noticed, saw her love for her parents, and she came running back in the car and jumped in. And, you know, she buckled in and I headed for the interstate. But the reason I share that is because in hindsight now, it's like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
you know, given the events of that day, that was the last goodbye. And she honored it. You know, that whisper came, that idea, that intuition, that thought, that I want to go say goodbye to Mom and Dad one more time. And she acted on it. You know, stop.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really love that about her
Mm-hmm.
intuition and her honoring the intuition and the way that played out. And you know, we got on the interstate. I cranked the cruise control up to 75 miles per hour. And away we were heading home, you know, and I was thinking about all the stuff I had to do, I was missing a day of work. We had a 5.5 hour journey ahead of us. I mean, it just,
Right.
you know, you do that, right?
The
I mean,
stuff, the human stuff. Yeah.
it's that to-do list in your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I had some interesting moments on the drive home, and there was a moment when I just looked in the rearview mirror,
Mm-hmm.
It was just to glance and see what traffic was doing and if there was any traffic. And I noticed Griffin, my little toddler son. I just he caught my eye, and he had fallen sound asleep in his car seat. And but I saw him. I
Yeah.
felt, wow, look at this miracle kid. We didn't know if we were going to have another child, that would been complications. We were told we may not, but there he was, and
Mm-hmm.
and even in a glance, I noticed these details. I noticed how long his eyelashes were.
Mm.
It was this magic little moment. And then I heard Spencer, my older son, playing with action figures behind me, the joyful noise, of a
Yeah.
little.
Yes. He was
And
7 at the time. Is that right? He was
yeah, he
7.
was 7 years old at the time. And then I glanced over at my wife, who also had reclined her seat back,
Mm-hmm.
but she was still holding onto my hand, and she had fallen asleep, but she was holding onto my hand. And I had the thought, I thought, wow, we're 10 years into a marriage. We're, so busy. I mean, working so hard, trying to raise a family.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, but here she is still holding my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was this moment of gratitude. It was really profound gratitude, like, wow. And it was about an hour after that things got, well, that everything came undone.
Mm-hmm.
There was reports of crosswinds, strong crosswinds. There was reports of a red pickup truck that was driving erratically on the interstate. I think the most difficult part about the story and what I remember is I believe I may have dozed off. I may have just nodded off for
Mm-hmm.
a second. I mean, for a half a second.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's no excuse for that. I mean, I that haunted me.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I think back, I was young. I was 33. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
talk about pursuing careers, raising a family, and
Right.
we've all been there. I mean, you're, you know, working 14, 16 hours a
Yeah.
day, you make ends meet, you're trying to build a life and a future. And for me, I had taken on that role of provider and protector. And anyway, I think I may have just nodded off.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so, I swerved to the right, and then
Mm-hmm.
I overcorrected to the left, and I lost control of the car.
Mm-hmm.
And it began to roll, not off the road, but down the road. It's
Mm-hmm.
miles per hour.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a horrific accident. It's a really
Mm-hmm.
bad car crash. And I blacked out for the actual crashing. I was aware we're crashing, but I think I blacked out. But when the car came to a stop, I was completely conscious.
Mm-hmm.
What I heard was Spencer, my 7-year-old, crying
Mm-hmm.
hysterically in the back seat. And I'm like, I've got to get to my boy.
Mm-hmm.
I had to get to my boy. And that's when I realized I couldn't move. I mean, I was pinned, and I couldn't tell, was I on the floor? Was I on the seat? There was
Mm-hmm.
all the broken glass, the rancid smell of the gasoline. I was in an absolute panic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a lot of adrenaline. I was in pain. I was struggling to breathe. I wasn't aware of my injuries, but what had actually happened is both of my legs had been crushed. Uh, my left leg eventually was amputated above the knee. It was so badly damaged. My back had been damaged in 2 places. My rib cage had been damaged. My lungs were collapsing. My right arm had almost been completely torn out and torn off, and then the seatbelt had cut through and ruptured all my insides. And I was a mess. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
physically, I was a mess. But I wasn't aware of the details of the injuries. I just knew my son's crying. I've got to get to my son.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when I became acutely aware that no one else was crying. And yeah, I mean, I knew at the scene in that moment that both Tamara, my wife, and Griffin, my youngest son, were gone. I won't go into the details of what I saw or what I knew, and it was not pleasant at all.
Mm.
In fact, that's probably the worst hell,
Yeah. Yeah.
a person could be in. I mean, I'm pinned. I'm losing consciousness. I've got a
Mm.
hysterical 7-year-old that I can't get to.
Mm-hmm.
Half the family's gone, and I was driving the car. I
Mm.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
the guilt. It's like, can't I? I need those 3 seconds back.
Yes.
Can't I turn back the clock? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was, and I don't share that to be graphic or morbid, but that was the setting.
Mm-hmm.
And in that darkness, that absolute despair, is when I had this interesting experience of light coming. Like
Mm-hmm.
light literally came, like light came and surrounded me.
Wow.
And it felt as if it was comforting me, as if it was holding me in this horrific
Mm.
situation. And it felt like I was rising above the accident scene. And then suddenly, and it felt very physical, but it's like, wow, I can breathe. I'm
Mm.
not in pain. How I was confused. I'm like, what is happening? How can I possibly be okay?
Mm-hmm.
And there was still the mental torment, but physically, suddenly the pain was gone. It's as if I had been delivered from this
Mm-hmm.
horrible situation. And I suppose, my soul, my spirit had left the body,
Mm-hmm.
but I was surrounded in this light, and I was very much alive. And then as I was coming to terms with how am I okay? What's happening?
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly Tamra, my wife, who I knew was
Mm-hmm.
the scene, suddenly she was there with me.
Mm.
And she was very much alive too. I
Mm.
mean, she was gorgeous,
Mm-hmm.
radiant, beautiful, but emphatic that I couldn't stay.
Mm-hmm.
She kept saying, Jeff, you can't be here. You got to go back. You got to go back. And she was emotional. It was
Mm-hmm.
it was very much like a exchange in this realm, but it was intensified. Like
Mm.
I could taste her tears. I mean,
Oh,
everything
wow.
was so intense.
Mm.
And I just wanted to hold her. I just wanted to stay. I just, I mean, still all the guilt, all the regret, all the panic of what was happening. But here she was,
Mm.
alive and
Mm-hmm.
well and beautiful. But she kept saying, "You've got to go back." And we literally had a conversation. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about the fact that if I stayed with her, Spencer, our 7-year-old, would be orphaned.
Mm-hmm.
And neither of us wanted that. Um, and for whatever reason, she could not come back, and she did have extensive injuries,
Mm-hmm.
worse perhaps than mine, but I could.
Mm-hmm.
I could, and we made a deal.
Mm-hmm.
We made a deal that I would come back, I would raise our son, and she was going to stay there. And that was the most profound goodbye,
Mm-hmm.
I dare say.
Mm-hmm.
But we made a choice. I gave my word. I said goodbye, and then whoosh, and here again, I
Wow.
didn't have to figure out how to come back. I didn't
Right.
have, well, how do I, it was just the choice. It was the intention
Mm.
going back. And then I found myself wandering about a very busy level 1 trauma center hospital,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
almost in a moment, like in the twinkling of an eye,
Yep.
whoosh, there I was in a whole different setting.
Wow.
And yeah, I have no concept of time, in this
Right.
book of light, really. I mean, I later found out people arrived at the scene, one of which was a physician. He was
Mm.
able to do some emergency things to get air in my lungs. Spencer was banged up a little bit. My 7-year-old, he bruised his ribs and broke his wrist, but he basically physically walked
Wow.
away.
Mm-hmm.
But emotionally, he thought the whole family's gone.
Right. Right.
I had to be extricated from the car and then airlifted or life flighted to the nearest level 1 trauma center.
Mm-hmm.
but I was unaware of any of that. I knew I'd crashed the car.
Mhm.
I knew I had said this profound goodbye in this light, this holding place, I suppose. And here I was wondering about the hospital.
Mhm.
Um, and I had this profound 360-degree awareness
Mm.
of everything. It's like I was aware of the doctors, the nurses, the
Mhm.
other patients, the families of the patients. And when I say aware of, I call it a oneness. There
Mhm.
was a profound connection to everything.
Like all at
And
the same time. You just knew everything. Yeah.
yes. And I mean, for instance, I passed a nurse, and they were completely unaware of me, by the
Right.
way. I was
Right.
completely aware of them. And a nurse brushes by me.
Mhm.
And I knew in an instant, I knew in a moment,
Mm.
her life, as if she was me and I was her. There was this profound connection. In fact, what I was aware of and what I felt was the abuse
Mm.
that she had suffered as a child,
Mhm.
the physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Like it was very real, like I knew.
Mm.
And I felt as if it was even like I was her and she was me. But in that same moment, I knew and experienced the magnificence of her soul. Like, look at
Mhm.
here, helping, serving,
Mm.
healing people. And this was true of everyone
Mhm.
encountered. I had this knowing of I was well I was seeing things from a higher perspective. My consciousness and I thought I'm seeing things as God sees them.
Mhm.
And I had grown up in a conservative Christian home. I even had a biblical verse come to me. It's the famous verse
Yeah.
when Jesus says, "In as much as you've done it unto the least of one of
Mhm.
these, you've done it unto me," which I used to think was a nice verse about being nice.
Mhm.
When did we do it? Well, when I was naked, you clothed me. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was a stranger, you took me in. And I thought, yeah, that's a nice verse about being nice. But as that verse came to me, now I saw it at a whole
Mm.
deeper level. I'm like, oh my goodness, I am them.
Yeah. That's
And there's,
literal. That's
yeah,
literal.
what the master was
Yeah.
saying is, I am the man in prison. I am
Yes.
the beggar in the street, and I am the stranger that simply wants acceptance to be taken in. So that there was this profound love and connection and all of this going on until I came to a body, a
Mhm.
man I didn't feel anything from, which was weird given the connectedness I was
Mhm.
experiencing. So I stepped closer and looked, and that's when I realized, that's when it became very real. It's like, oh my gosh, that's me. It
Mhm.
wasn't me. I mean, I was
Right.
having profound connect, but there was my body,
Mhm.
there was my flesh, there was oh, and this was so profound. Like I stood there, I'm standing there looking at my body, what was me, and I saw the mess. I mean, the complete disarray,
Mm.
the
Mhm.
injuries, all of it. And yet there was this acute realization of, wow, I never realized. Like I
Mm.
took my body for granted. What
Mhm.
a magnificent machine. It's like,
Mm.
I mean,
Mhm.
I'm like, I didn't have to remind my heart to beat.
Right.
Or tell my lungs to breathe or teach my eyes how to see. I'm like, I'm looking at this thinking, oh, I never realized what a
Mm.
magnificent gift, what a beautiful machine our body is.
Mhm.
And mine was so broken.
Mm.
And, and I knew I had to get back in it
Mhm.
or join with it. And, and it's funny, there was a narrative. I'll share this with you. Um, in this setting. And I
Mhm.
adore you. You've been such a dear friend to me. Thank you.
Oh, I haven't even begun to talk about my thoughts for you yet. That's coming, but yes, thank you.
But as I looked at that, there was this narrative. It's almost as if the divine was standing behind me. And in this experience, it was always behind me. I don't know why I
Mm.
never
Mhm.
turned around, but there was this narrative, this mentor, this divine presence.
Mhm.
And I was told, your body literally is a
Mhm.
temple. Like I
Mhm.
had read that. I mean, when I
Right.
was And I, like, oh yeah, I heard that in Sunday school once upon a time. But it's like, no, literally your body. And here I am looking at it,
Mm-hmm.
realizing
Mm-hmm.
magnificent tabernacle it is,
Mm-hmm.
that your body literally is a temple.
Mm-hmm.
And any symbols of you going into a sacred, sacred place to receive, knowledge or a gift was symbolic of my spirit literally entering my body.
Mm-hmm.
And and I had done ceremonies like that. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought, oh, okay, now there's more now I see this is a symbol of
Right.
entering my body. And here I got to get back in there again.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the memory of being born. I literally
Mm.
remembered being born, which was really
Yeah.
interesting. Like, oh,
Yeah.
have I done this before? Have I done
Wow. Yeah.
this before? And there was significant symbols there.
Yes.
It was really beautiful what went on, and very difficult, as I thought I've got to
Mm.
get body.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I didn't have to figure out how. It was the choice. It was the
Mm.
intention. I'm going in.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And then boom, I'm back in the body. But the weight,
Mm.
I mean the guilt, the grief,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
the regret, all of that returned so heavy.
Mm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so heavy. And I was intubated. They had a big tube doing the
Mm-hmm.
breathing for my lungs. My right arm was obviously immobile. My legs, having been crushed, were immobile. And they eventually tied down my left hand because I kept grabbing at everything,
Mm.
trying to equipment. And yeah, I was in ICU for I don't know how long. I was in the hospital for almost 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
and there was 18 surgeries, putting me back together. And
Wow. Did you feel
yeah,
yourself jump into that body on that gurney, or was it later that you kind of, was there time that went by? I mean, and time's an illusion, but people are curious about that. Like, was it in that state, or was it later on that you were like, I'm in my body?
no, I knew then. I'm like, oh
Oh,
boy,
okay.
back in.
Okay.
And that, I mean, there was tender things. There was tender
Hmm.
things. I mean, my family had been made aware.
Hmm.
I don't talk about some of this very much. My brothers were amazing, but my
Yeah.
younger brother, for whatever reason, my younger brother had been selected or had self-selected. He came in to whisper and tell me, and
Mm.
this was after. This wasn't in this moment. This was
Right.
as I was in ICU. I was basically unconscious, but I was conscious. I knew what was
Right.
going on. But I remember him coming in to tell me that Tamara and Griffin had been killed. He didn't know that I knew.
Oh, right.
He knew that I was aware of that. So I can't speak. I'm intubated. I'm basically unconscious, but I am completely aware that my little brother's here
Mm.
and he's crying and he's trying to find the words to tell me
Mm.
half your family got killed.
Yeah.
And I knew, I already
Hmm.
knew,
Hmm.
but he didn't know that I knew.
Right.
What a
Mm.
courageous, tender,
Hmm.
horrible, hard, beautiful thing that he was the one.
Hmm.
And so I was, yeah, like I say, I was unconscious, but I was very conscious. And
Hmm.
even in the hospital, sometimes it felt like I was standing in the corner watching it all.
Hmm.
I was always tethered to the body. I never was really
Hmm.
separate from it. And to answer your question, that's a long answer, but I was aware. When I
Yeah.
when I went back in, it's like, oh
It was
yeah,
there.
now
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then all of those human emotions, feelings, sensations were came along with it.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Yes, they
Wow.
did. Yes, they did. And the hospital was a long stay. I learned a lot.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's probably worth pointing out. I mean, because there's skeptics that say, well, you had this out of
Right.
body as the oxygen was cut off to your brain and you were hallucinating. And I suppose that
Yeah.
could be true, but it was so real to me.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting part of that. And our friend Jeff O'Driscoll, Dr. O'Driscoll,
Yeah.
this is where he and I became friends. I mean,
Yes.
he was the attending physician in that level 1 trauma center that they airlifted me into. And he didn't know me from Adam, and I
Yeah.
didn't know him. But he and one of the nurses had a profound experience while they were working on me. I mean, he had a team of 5 surgeons, I mean, respiratory and orthopedic and all these people working on trying to piece my body back together. But he experienced, and he shared this in a book, he saw my wife's spirit standing in the operating room as they worked on me, and she communicated with him. And he and one of the nurses, when I got out of ICU and was in surgical recovery, so this is months after the accident, but they came to tell me, which is a miracle. You know, I mean, I don't know. Dr. O'Driscoll laughs. He says, the nurse convinced me. I said, we're not going to go talk to that guy. I'm not going to go tell him I see dead people in the operating room. But it was beautiful because when they came and when they shared, I immediately trusted him. And he became a dear friend. In fact, when he said I saw her and she communicated with me, and I hadn't told a soul about what I had experienced. I asked him, what did she say? And he said, she only shared her gratitude for what we were doing to save your life. And I burst into tears, and I said, of course she did. If she, you know, if that's who, but he didn't know we'd made this deal. He didn't know that I'd said, go back. And so all the pieces kind of quickly came together. Here was a clinician, a doctor that I trusted, who said, hey, we had a profound experience. And he was one of the first ones I told what I had experienced. And I literally thought, if I'm nuts, you know, he'll send me to the psych ward. He'll get me this I need.
It was a big leap. Big
leap. But, so we've become friends. And that was unique because I guess shared death experience. But it wasn't just me having the profound things happen in that scenario. There was other people that were very healthy. They weren't near death or dying, but they had spiritual encounters as well.
And Dr. Jeff, I've heard him say once, I think I asked him, and he talked about how when he saw her, it wasn't like coming out of his eyes. It was a 360-degree experience, and why he likes to use that experience, which I thought that was interesting because that's similar to your experience where it was like happening everywhere. It was, you'd even say behind you. And I think he even used that word. It's like she was behind me, but I could see her, or, you know, things like that. So, I mean, it just goes to show you that, you know, I don't know, that wouldn't be the first thing I would make up is that I've seen in this level, you know, on these levels. I mean, but I understand you've been for, what year was that? That was
1997. It's been almost 28 years.
It's been almost 20 years. So, but at that time, I mean, it wasn't much talked about, or, you know, especially with a medical person, not at all, rarely.
It was very unique. It was very unique. And I had great care in the hospital. I mean, there was horrible things that happened. You know, I throw pulmonary emboli, the blood clots that lodge in your...
Wow. Yeah, any of those could take you.
Those
I mean, alone.
I really shouldn't be here, but but it was a profound experience. One of the most profound experiences was at the end of my hospital stay, and I was in surgical. I was out of surgical recovery. I was in the rehabilitation wing, and I had that light come again. You know, that light came, and I had grieved so miserably. I mean, the physical challenges were one thing, but the emotional grief was the biggest battle. And anyway, that light came and was comforting me one night, and I felt like I rose above the hospital bed. But this time the light like dispensed, it dispersed, and I was in a beautiful place. I mean, people say heaven, they say the other side, the spirit world. The only word that comes close to what I experienced is I was home. I was home. And I felt so good. And I was whole. Like I had both legs and both feet. And I began to run. And it was a very physical, sensory experience. Like I could feel the energy of the ground beneath my feet. I could feel the intelligence in my calves and thighs. And I was joyfully thinking, I'm home. And I'm healed. And I kind of got the message I wasn't there to stay. about that same time, there was this corridor off to my left, and I knew intuitively I'm to go that way. So I began to go down the corridor. And as I did, I realized there was a crib at the end of the corridor. And Griffin, my little son that passed, he was only 14 months old. He was still sleeping in a crib. He was climbing out of it and causing all kinds of problems at night, but he was still sleeping in a crib. And so I raced to this crib. I ran to the crib and I looked in it, and there he was. My little boy is beautiful and peaceful and sleeping, like when I glanced in the rearview mirror in the car. And I noticed the details. I saw how long his eyelashes were. And I picked him up and I held him, and it felt so physical. I mean, have you ever, I know you have, you've picked up a sleeping child.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, there's
the weight,
and there's
the warmth.
and
Yeah.
And I'm holding him, and I can feel him breathing, and I feel his breath on my neck. And I leaned over and I smelled his hair. I mean, I'm all the sensories. I thought, this is my boy. I'm really holding my son. And I had the thought, I would have these questions, and there was immediate, I thought, how can this be? How can I be holding him in such a physical, sensory way? And the answer came, all spirit is matter. It's just more refined. And I'm like, oh, this is a refined, it's like a physical experience. I can smell him. I can feel him, the weight, the heat. He's solid against me. And I began to weep. I began to just cry. Boy. And again, there was this intense, overwhelming, powerful, cosmic, wise presence behind me. And I began to be fearful. The guilt. The guilt was rising up, and I thought, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Little boy's here because I crashed the car. Life was short because I overcorrected or fell asleep, and there was this guilt bubbling up, and this presence is coming closer and closer, and I'm holding my boy and I'm crying, and the presence is coming, and I'm thinking, I am in so much trouble. That's God. And I had this thought. My thought was, I hope I can be forgiven. And wow, with that thought, and this almost felt physical too, these arms just wrapped around and held me and my boy. And that's when it's like the lid came off. There was just this download. And the first thing that came is, there's nothing to forgive. Everything's in divine order. And I'm here I am arguing. I'm like, no, that can't be. Can this be in divine order?
Right.
And I began to see my life. I mean, they say your life flashes, but I was watching my life. I saw my parents' divorce. I saw the insecurities that created in me. I saw how I bandaged that by being the guy who decided I would make the grade and make the team and get the girl and do,
Yep.
And yet here I am in the arms of the divine watching this. And I even saw things where I'm like, well, that was a mistake. I didn't mean to do that.
Right.
But there was this communication where this beloved being that held me said, there's no mistakes. What did you learn? And so I'm looking at my life, and I'm putting all these judgments on it. And
right.
what I'm being told is, but what did you learn? What did you learn? And I began to see my life in a much different way. And I even saw things, I'm like, well, that was wrong. And I knew it was wrong, and I did it anyway.
Right. Right.
And as I'm held, I'm judging it, and I'm having these feelings about it. But the divine being that held me said, well, that's your judgment of it, not ours. We love you. And I had this personal, profound word. Here I am holding my little boy, who to me, he's perfect. He's
for sure.
He's divine. And yet here I am in the arms of God, and I'm having those feelings like, is that how I'm viewed? Is that how I'm seen? I remembered Griffin toddling about, on Easter morning, and he's calling balls, and he's slobbering, and he's bumped his head, and he's doing
right.
And I'm like, well, that's us. We're down here slobbering and running into each other, and the entire universe just says, look at my children, they're learning to walk. And that was that intense love for my son, which was multiplied by this intense unconditional love I was feeling from the divine. And it was personal, but I knew that was true of everyone.
Right.
And I had all these thoughts about, wow, I've failed the test. In fact, that's what I believed. I thought life, the angels are keeping score, and they obviously failing. But even as I had those thoughts, what was communicated to me is, oh, my dear boy, life is not a test, it's a gift. It's an absolute gift. And you're simply there to learn. There was no judgments. There was love. And I'll wrap this up, but and this was interesting too. Here I am in the arms of God, and I'm told by God, I want you to exercise your will. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, it's your will be done. I've known this. I mean, all of my learning, my conditioning, my And as I had that thought, God says to me, your will is my will. That's how much you're loved. And I'm like, but that can't be. And it was like, no, my will is that you have free will. That's my will, is that you get to choose. And here in this, you get to choose. And I was told I could be mad at God the rest of my life because this accident happened or was allowed to happen, or why wasn't I warned? Why didn't I get the whisper like Tamara did? Stop the car, pull over, I could be mad at God the rest of my life, and that would be okay. Just a choice. I was told I could beat myself up for the rest of my life, and that's a choice. And I was told that I could give my son to God. I could literally trust and hand him over and exercise my will. Therefore, it might not feel like he was taken away, that I would be exercising my will and handing him over and giving him back. And in all that love and all that peace and all that beauty and all that truth, joy, there's so many words. I was able to kiss my little boy and hand him over. I did. And then whoosh, back I was in the body. I mean, back in the hospital, to the amputation and the brace on the other leg and the arms in a sling. And I've got this colostomy bag handling all the broken up intestines and, all the physical stuff and all the grief again, back to this dimensional reality. But I think I learned a little bit, I learned a lot. But I don't want anyone to think that I had this crash and then had these experiences and I was okay.
Right.
I had the crash, I had the experiences, and I grieved and I struggled and I processed, and I, like anybody would.
I think that's what was, so it's been almost coming up on 10 years since we've met. And we met in a time where that was just what I needed, because, to listen to your story, as a spectator or as a listener, it resonates deeply in your soul for sure. And I think sometimes we do think, well, he's lucky. He had this profound experience. He never has to worry again. But you were sure to bring in that other piece for me that I recognize that you still had all of the physical emotions, the physical experiences, the human experiences that was still part of your life. The fact that you had this profound moment, it wouldn't have been right had you not ever, from that point on, not continued to have your human experience. And our human side has all those complexities of pain and worry and shame and all of those things. And for me, that was the comfort it was a comfort, and it was a moment that I realized I was looking for, this transcendent moment that was going to take all my pain away. And you literally had that, and it didn't happen. And it just your story was able to tell me and teach me, number one, that the physical things are holy and beautiful. even the difficult things, like in your story, it's almost as if they pulled up a picture you drew in kindergarten and you're like, oh, how embarrassing. But they're like, but you drew this in kindergarten. I mean, we just don't have the same judgment in our highest self and and in the heaven self as we do with this physical self. And to create the balance between those two, it's not to just get away, because I really, in my thoughts too, it was like, I have got to do something or be something or to make sure that none of this suffering happens. That was like the definition of, that was like the level of how I was, if I was being good or not, right? Was like the level of suffering I was having. And so it was such a gift to meet you. I feel like in the book, the boy, the mole, and the horse and the fox, you were my horse that led me to those understandings and helped me see it. And it took years for myself to like, it's never like I'm so happy that happened, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is that gratitude and that complexity. And I think what's interesting in your story is that like lesson number one was how amazing your physical body is, and how interesting it is that we try to perfect it, judge it, shrink it, take care. Like, I mean, we really have a lot of judgment on this body. And that was like another really profound lesson I learned from you, was to really, really feel deeply that gratitude for my body and for my physical experience, and to let go of the worry or the trying, or, instead of having it be a test, I decided it was going to be testing. I'm going to test this thing out. What I mean? Like, that's the testing. Like,
let's try
testing.
this thing. Let's see how fast it can go.
Let's see what we can do. Right. And, and it gave a lot of freedom. And I think, so yes, you're definitely in that story. You are the horse. You were one of my sages for me, and just, asking questions, and it's going to make me emotional, honoring my questions, honoring my hurt, and just, no matter what I said, you were always just, you always just had something to say that was comforting and non-judgmental. And I just thought, oh, wow, if we can live this way, I'm in, I'm in. And it doesn't mean that everything was okay. Everything was okay. Everything doesn't hurt, right? And I feel like that in my world, I get clients that come and, they're suffering and they want it to go away. And I know how that feels to want it to go away. And I would never tell you, to be grateful that it's there. We have to go through a process to get to that point, right? We kind of have to move through the journey, like in the book, to get to that point. But it's really a disservice that we have this belief that we're not supposed to have difficult things, or that we're, which on the tail end of that is that we can make problems for people, like that things aren't in that divine order. It's really easy to get outside of that thinking, but when at least for me, when I can be there, I think that it's the best part of me. And I think in the book, one of the symbolisms I think that comes up for that is the mole who's always talking about cake. He always talks about cake. And I think, to me, that's representative to me of like, this human part, this part that, that's just, it's not necessarily important, or it's not necessarily vital. But it's a part of being human is to eat this cake. And they elevate that toward, even throughout the book, a little bit, it's a little bit of a joke, but it becomes kind of a symbol for that human side, that human part of who we are.
Yeah, I love that. And you're so true. I mean, pain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now I laugh and say, well, gosh, pain has become one of my greatest teachers. I say pain's
Right.
my most frequent lover. She shows up about every day and reminds me I'm alive. But it's a beautiful,
Right.
I mean, it isn't, it's painful, but it's soul expanding.
Right.
And then, yes, I mean, people are so, they'll say, oh gosh, what was that like to be out of the body?
Yeah.
Leave this realm. And I'm inclined to say, hold on a minute.
Right.
What's it to be in the body?
Yeah. Right.
What's it like to feel the breeze in your hair and the sunshine on your back? And let's focus. I mean, that's why we came. We came to have a human experience. It's what we wanted. We wanted to express. So yeah, taste the ice cream.
Yeah.
And honor the physical realm. And sure, be healthy, do what you can.
Right.
But realize what a magnificent gift and how beautiful it is to be in the body, in this third dimension, and having the experience so that all things, all of it.
Right.
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to tell you that Michelob Ultra is giving you the chance to win tickets to the NBA Finals. That's right, the 2025 NBA Finals. Just head to michelobultra.com/NBA Finals. Michelob Ultra courtside NBA Finals sweepstakes. No purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents, excluding Maryland residents. 21 up. Begins at 9 a.m. EST on February 16, 2025. Ends on May 5th, 2025. See official rules at michelobultra.com/rules for price and details. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
Wow, this house is cute. But can I really get in the game in this economy? I do have savings, and I am responsible-ish. I should bury it. I'm being wild. But what if I'm not being wild, though? Could I actually score a...
Kick off your home buying journey with Zillow's new BuyAbility tool. It makes it easy to find out what you can afford, so you can get off the bench and onto the playing field with confidence. Check your BuyAbility only on Zillow.
Well, when I reached out and talked to you about this book, you had already read it. You loved it, and you said you share it with many people. So, I've got my copy right here too. And I just think, have you ever, do you follow on Instagram, Charles Mackesy? If you follow him, he is just, or ever watch an interview of him, he's just, I don't know, he's just amazing to me. Just so kind and just knows how to get down to the simplest of things, the book is so simple, isn't it? But so profound, or I like to say, and so profound, because it's both.
It is. It's simple and it's profound. And I love so many things about it. I mean, like you, and these are all aspects of our life.
Yeah.
But I love it. Yeah, the horse feels like the spiritual strength, the heart of me and you and us.
Yep.
And the mole is the human part that wants to taste the cake. It's like, hey, I want to put my bare feet in the grass. Let's just do that,
Yes.
And the fox is so brilliant, but is almost like the ego.
Yes.
Like that gives the alternate, which we want both. We don't know life. We don't know the horse unless we know the fox. And we don't know the unless we know the horse. And the fox is not bad. The fox is, and the horse is not good. It's just, and they hold the context of light and dark, that we have the experience, and the mole is that light-hearted piece, which is spiritual. Spirit is light. It really is.
Yes.
Chocolate cake. I used to have a friend. He was a brilliant photographer. We'd be doing projects. And I'm lucky. I get to work with artists. I get to work with writers and cinematographers and photographers and poets and musicians. I'm so lucky, blessed that way.
Yeah.
But he would always say, well, we can start on the project, but first we have to have a piece of chocolate cake. I used to laugh about it. We always have a piece of chocolate cake. He would endeavor into the project. But what I love, the book is so cool.
Yes.
I love the sketchery.
Yes.
This is what I see in the sketchery. And I'm an artist. I draw, I sketch, I make and things like that. But I don't know. I just open to any page. You could open to any page. But look how he's searching line in the jaw of the horse and the neck. It's like he's sketching, and it's like when you say get to the simplicity, the sketches are
Yes.
see the journey of where's the curve, where's the line, where does that jawline come, how does that neckline roll, and what I love is the sketches are in it. It's not they didn't do
Yes.
the illustrations, they left
Right.
it sketchery, and in life, we're all looking for that line,
Mm.
we're looking for that place, and yet the gesture that he catches, the love where the nose connects to the little boy's head, and
Yeah.
there's just it is a beautiful book that's
Yeah.
math written, and there's so much power
Yeah.
and wisdom in the simple love of what goes on between these entities,
These
the horse
entities.
and the fox. I mean, they're all different personalities, different entities, and yet in many ways they're all within us.
Right. In the book, he says, what do you think is the biggest waste of time? Comparing yourself to others, said the mole. I wonder if there's a school of unlearning. And I thought about that with you. I feel like that was almost in all of your learning was just as much unlearning. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What were some of those things you had to unlearn? I mean, we talked a little bit about them, but
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things. I mean, number one, like from the time I was small, we were taught that we're separate, that
right.
we're at your desk. That's where you sit. This is your work.
Yes.
And the boys over here and the girls over here, and whatever, I mean, so there was division in gender, division in the smart kids sit over here, the creative
Right.
there, and there was this separation, this division, this notion
Mm.
of individuality, which we
Mhm.
are individuals. But one of the things to unlearn, and granted, I had a cheat sheet, I had this
Yeah.
perfect experience, but was the oneness, the
Mhm.
connection that I am you and you are
Yeah.
me, and that there is so much more in common
Mhm.
as manifestations of the divine than there is separate as, this is
Right.
what she does. And yet it gives the individuality
Mhm.
more validity. It's like, okay,
Right.
me in this big universe, this universe, this one verse, this one song,
Mhm.
I get to be me
Mhm.
in my vibration, in my tone, and you get to be you.
Right.
But when they begin to harmonize,
Mhm.
when humanity begins to harmonize and each of us have our place,
Mhm.
which, I mean, it would be so boring if we were all alike, right?
Right.
That's why there's differences between the fox, the horse, the mole, and the boy.
Right.
They all have their own unique contribution and feeling and opinion, and even the way they show up and manifest.
Yes. Even that word
Beautiful.
harmony, I pondered on that word for a year and realized because at the first it's kind of like I've got to step in tune kind of a thing, but by the end of the year it was like actually for there to be a harmony I got to play my note. I don't play the same note as everyone else. I play my note. That's how you make harmony. And so that was a lesson, a year of a lesson on that, where really having to decipher who I am and what I think, kind of, blowing out everything and kind of starting again a little bit because I needed to know what note I was playing. I needed to understand how I wanted to show up so that I could harmonize, so that that's how I couldn't harmonize, so I'd figured that stuff out.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, knowing yourself is divine. I mean, and
yes.
know themselves, and that's a deep journey. I'm still learning.
Oh yeah, me too.
I'm I'm learning layers and layers and layers of me.
Yeah.
And what I love too is when you get, I mean, some may call this a children's book.
Right, right.
It's so profound. I was at this conference, and there was a panel, and it was really brilliant and bright people, and I was shocked I was even on the panel, but they were asking them, what's the most powerful book you've recently read? And
Mhm.
they're good to great, like those
Right.
are this book, I'm sure, but they all had these wonderful, powerful, business books and coaching books and self-help books. And I'm sitting there panicking, thinking, I don't know what to say. I have no
Yeah.
idea what to say. And I wish I would have said the boy, the mower,
Yeah.
the fox, and the horse. But when they got to me, I actually said, well, let's see. Maurice Sendak, Where the Wild Things Are, another children's book, and
Yeah.
everybody laughed. They laughed.
Yeah.
But I don't know, there's a profound message in that book.
Yeah.
And this is where we get to.
I love it. In this, but in one of the pages, here's the page. I love it when it says, they're just kind of chatting at the beginning of the book. This is the mole and the boy, and the boy says, "What's that over there?" And he says, "It's the wild," said the mole. "Don't fear it." What do you think the wild is?
Well, the wild is this mortality.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw even in Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are.
Yes,
Here,
exactly.
Boy, he wants to sail away and he wants to let the wild rumpus begin.
Yeah.
And it isn't that we're here to be wild, but it's here because it is wild. It's the unknown.
Right.
We don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
What free will is going to do. We don't know what other people's choices are going to be and how that's going to affect us. It's wild. And we get to navigate through it, and to not fear it, I suppose, is to live life. Life is to be lived. Life is to be experienced. I mean, that's the point. So yeah, there's the wild. I mean, we may have sat in some other realm once upon a time and looked down at this beautiful blue and green planet and said, "There's the wild."
Right. What's that? There's the wild. Yeah. Don't fear it. Don't fear it. So throughout the book, I think there's a lot of messages about the idea of love, right? That love is, it said, there was a quote, "What do you think success is?" asked the boy. "To love," said the mole. So this theme throughout the book is love. And I think that's kind of the, lessons that you kind of learned was really love is the most important thing, which is it's like the fuel for oneness, right? Like the love and oneness are almost, they're just hand in hand. Once we have the love, we have that oneness. Once we have that oneness, we can't help but experience the love. That's how it showed up for you. And so tell me a little bit about what you have learned about love because you learned more than just through those 6 months in the hospital. I mean, it was a lot of learning about love. And I know you're going to say it, but what was that needed to have, where did the love needed to point the most through that journey?
Oh, Mechelle, you ask such good questions. Yeah, love.
Mm.
I mean, when we, and I still grapple with this sometimes.
Right.
Love is the most powerful force in the universe. It truly is. But then when we lose someone,
right,
and grief,
mm-hmm.
grief is so heavy. It's so
Mm-hmm.
painful. It's so much, and yet I've realized that grief is love.
Mm.
In fact, grief might be the most magnificent manifestation of love.
True.
Because we grieve because we loved. And I've asked myself that question. In fact, just recently, I was pondering this, and I thought, love is too hard. It's too much, and it's too much because I know the cost. I know what it costs. You know what I mean? And this is my thought process.
Right.
Wow, to love completely and wholly, and then, but the cost. And I'm like, well, what's the cost? Well, the cost is the risk. The risk of looking like a fool, or the risk of getting hurt,
yeah,
or the risk of loving and losing. The risk to love. And I was having all these thoughts, thinking, yeah, the cost, the risk is to know the power of love. In that thought, and again, it was a biblical verse, and I'm not necessarily a religious person, but these things come up. Truth there, this biblical verse came up where it said, "God is love." I thought, well, wait. How can I put a cost and a risk?
True.
Something that is divine. God is love. And if we are manifestations of God, then I am love. I am love in all of its manifestations, in all of its experiences. In all of it, it's looking like a fool or getting hurt or losing. And yet, if I am loved, there is no cost. There is no root. Once again, it's like, why that there's the wild, don't fear it.
Right.
You don't say, there's love. Don't lean into it, because love will teach you more than anything. There was a time I thought, love, you betrayed me.
Yeah, totally.
I trusted you and you betrayed me.
Yeah.
Love, you're so brutal. And yet, no, in many ways, I suppose I betray myself by believing.
Yeah.
Is not love.
Mm-hmm.
It's all love.
Well, and if that does feel too much, or if that does feel difficult to acquire, then it's not that we're doing something wrong, but that we need healing, because that is the truth of who you are, is that you are in me, we are that love. And if that feels too big to hold, then we need some healing to do, rather than what's wrong with me? Why can't I figure that out? I mean, there's some healing to do. There's a reason why the fox does say, if you let me go, I'm going to kill you. Like, our ego isn't nice. It will tell us lots of stories, and again, like we talked about though, but that doesn't mean we get rid of it. And in the book, especially, like as the people are loving toward this fox, then he becomes more and more profound as the book goes on, and he becomes one of the helpers. So I think that is so. One of the things quickly at the end of the book, so this horse is the sage, this horse is like that spirit. And you get to the point where the horse says, I've got something I haven't told you yet, and we're sprung, like all of a sudden, you feel this tenderness even within this horse about his own greatness and the judgment he has held, or she. And for me, that was a really, a little bit of a shocking story that showed up there, that he claims I almost hear it in a whisper that, I can fly, he wants, can people hold this? Because, and he says in the past, it hasn't worked. People haven't liked it. It makes them feel bad. And so for me, it was just, we're always moving to that next level. And even the horse, for him to be vulnerable and at the same time to claim this greatness within himself, and then to be loved and accepted. I think that their answer was, we love you even more. Where you were worried that your gifts or your specialness was going to be, judged, this is how we can love you more. And how would that feel to have that received? And then what does that look like to be able to show that to other people, for them to show me their greatness and my ego to not get in the way, to say, oh, that's more, that I can love them even more. And to me, you've just been an example to me of that, of living that way. And I just want everyone to know how grateful I am. And I want them to read all of your books. Yeah, your children's books, darling, and your book, Knowing. Is that still available?
Still available. Okay. Yeah, Knowing and Where Are You is the children's books. Are available on Amazon, and you can get them there. And yet, Mechelle, thank you. Mm. I mean, I love you, and you've been a dear friend and a mentor to me. You don't realize that the questions you ask so very soul expanding and soul searching for me, and we're all learning. We're all learning together. Thank you for being you.
When most people are asked what they want, they will answer, I want to be happy. But happy takes practice. And that's what the Wholeness Library is all about. So check it out free at thewholenessnetwork.com.